One eternity later.
Fashion, drama, opulence, knitting, fashion. J.W. Anderson. Opulence, icon, style, comfort, coziness, fashion, style. That's right, guys, I'm back today and I'm showing you the finished product. It only took me 3 months, 4 months? I don't know. I started this thing back in like July. And I've regretted it ever since. I don't think I've ever taken on a project that took me quite this much time. Like, I don't think even my master's thesis took me this much time to do. This, guys, I never wanted it again. That's it. This is it for now. But I'm just so happy. Look at this. It's so stylish and everything.
Look at the material.
You should be going home
You can
anyway.
be the judge of it.
And I'm just so happy that I did it. You know, it definitely took a lot of patience. It took a lot of time, but I think the end result was really worth it because I love this sweater and I'm gonna be wearing it for the rest of my life. This is now a family heirloom. I'm gonna put my name in the back of it on a little tag. I'm gonna pass it on to my children. They're gonna pass it on to their children. My children's children are gonna pass it on to their children. And my children's children's children are gonna pass it on to their children. Otherwise, I'm gonna be buried in it. Something's happening with this sweater. This is like a national treasure. Nicolas Cage, come at me. But anyway, let me show you how to finish making it, all right? In this video, I'm gonna show you how to finish the cuffs, the collar, the ribbing, and of course the button bands. So let's get into it. All right, so as you can see here, I have the body of my cardigan all sewed together. At the end of my last video, I was talking about taking off all of the little tails and everything, so I did that and everything is sewed together and nice and neat. For the back panel, sewing that to the side panels, I only did the bottom two, and I left the two top unsewed, and that's because you're gonna wanna leave them unsewed in order to attach the sleeves. Now, here's one of the sleeves that I have here. If you look at the pattern that you can get from the website, you notice that it's a 3x4 square piece that you have to stitch together and sew. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna fold it in half, and this is going to be your sleeve here, and you're gonna sew it to these squares here. Now, technically, the side that has the houndstooth, the green, and the black and the orange squares is gonna be the outside. That's where the cuff is gonna go, that's where your hand's gonna be. But it doesn't matter really which way you do it. I just wanted to follow the pattern, but you could also do it this way. So here, I already have one of the sleeves sewn with the cuff on. And I will show you how to sew this cuff on the correct way so that you get this nice backstitch pattern on it. I also went ahead and I sewed on the bottom ribbing, both the front and the back to the cardigan. That's because it really is easy just to do that before you sew everything together, just because it's kind of like one long piece that you sew together and then you attach to the body of the cardigan. And if you've gotten this far in knitting this cardigan so far, I don't need to show you how to do that. This is actually a relatively easy pattern to do compared to all the different patterns that you need to do for the rest of the cardigan. Okay, so before I show you how to attach your cuff to the collar, there is one thing I want to mention. So this is actually not the cuff I'm going to be attaching to the sleeve of my cardigan because this is the first one I made and I accidentally made it too short. So see how this cuff goes across all 4 squares of this sleeve? Here's the one that's too short. Here's the other sleeve. See how this just does not fit no matter how far I stretch it? Like, I messed up. But that's why I'm making these videos, so I can show you how to do this right. So I thought it'd be a good idea to make this one, you know, shorter than what the instructions say, because I don't want like a big huge sleeve like hanging down. Like, I don't think most people want that. I actually wanted to, like, you know, kind of like a regular sweater. I wanted to come in and like kind of hug my elbows. I wanted to come in and like hug my wrists a little bit. So I decided like, oh, I'm just gonna ignore the instructions. I'm just gonna like do as many stitches as I thought was necessary. So on the instructions, it says to use 4mm needles with 110 stitches of your red Aran yarn. I think for this one I did 80 stitches, and I kind of have a tight And I kind of have a lot of tension when I'm knitting, just like in my shoulders and everything. I mean, like actually when I'm knitting, like there's a lot of tension. And it turns out 80 stitches is just way too short. So what I did for the cuffs is I actually used 96 stitches. And one important thing to mention for the ribbing is that it's in a knit 2, purl 2 pattern. So what that means is that, you know, that's how you get these nice little rows that kind of stretch out like an accordion. You have 2 knit, 2 purl, 2 knit, 2 purl, so on and so forth, and that's what makes ribbing. I don't know why the instructions are like this, but like, listen to this. For the collar, do 119 stitches. For the back rib, do 182. For the front, do 94. The issue is, if you're gonna do a 4-stitch pattern and you're gonna do ribbing, you need a multiple of 4 rows. So, you know, like 4, 8, 16, so on and so forth, 12. So for what I did for the cuffs, I used 96 stitches, all right? And I used 4mm needles for all of the trimmings, you know, the collar, cuffs, the waistband trimming, and for the button band. So when you do make the cuffs, I think that 96 stitches with like a lightweight yarn like this, let me get the yarn actually, let me see. So I used a medium number 4 yarn for this, and with that, and with a moderate amount of tension, 96 stitches I think is the minimum that you can make, so keep that in mind. And then I'll also tell you, for the front rib, you make 2, one for the left and the right front. I used 92 stitches for each. For the back rib, which goes across the entire back, 6 squares, 6 panels, I used 180 stitches. It's a lot. It took me a very long time to get through the whole thing. And then for the collar, I used 118 stitches. So you can even see here. Here is my 80 stitch cuff. Here's my 96 stitch cuff. You can see the difference here, quite a bit of difference, and you know, they do stretch. So now I'll show you how to actually connect the real cuff to the sleeve. So to attach the cuffs to the sleeve, you're gonna need several things. You're gonna need, of course, your sewing needle for yarn, and then I really would recommend actually getting safety pins this time. The little hack I used before with using binder clips is not gonna work in this situation because you are stretching it. If you are making your cuffs smaller than the sleeve so that you kind of get some binding at your wrists, you are gonna have to stretch it while you're sewing it, and then it's gonna pull the whole work together. So you really will need a handful of safety pins. Okay, so here I have my sleeve all together and I have my cuff. Now the instructions say when you are casting off your cuff to leave a really long tail at the end of it so that you can sew it to the cuff. Make sure you do that. This one is probably like 2 arms lengths long. Just make sure you don't get any knots in it either. So before you start sewing, what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna stretch and adhere this to the underside of the sleeve. So this is actually gonna go on the back side, kind of like this. You're not gonna, you know, fold it down and sew together like that so you can kind of leave like a seam. You're actually just gonna go ahead and leave the seam exposed on the front side by sewing in from the back side. And what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna stretch this out, take several of your safety pins, and what I was doing is I would just pin it at the seam of each square. So I would take one safety pin and put it at the end here, because I'm gonna be starting from the side where the long tail is, which is over here by the orange. And I would put a pin here, put a pin here, and then pin it to the end here so you know how much it has to stretch so that you don't get uneven stretching. So here I have the back side of the sleeve, which is going to be folded up to be the inside, and I have my cuff pinned on at these locations, and I just went ahead and I kind of sewed this part over here to the very corner of this orange piece, and that's going to be where I start, and I'm going to go and do a back stitch seam across all of this. To do this, we're going to hold the wrong side of our sleeve and whichever side of the cuff, and you're gonna overlap by about 1 stitch. We're gonna sew right across this bottom stitch here, and you're gonna do this for all of the different squares. So to do the back stitch, you're gonna take your needle and you're going to insert it through to the other side. And then on the front side, you're gonna work backwards. You're gonna go back towards the original stitch and go back and through and make sure that you're only catching just the very top of your cuff on the inside and pull that through. So the back stitch is a pretty simple stitch. It's the same stitch I use to connect all my panels beforehand. So if you watch that tutorial, you pretty much already know how to do this. But with the back stitch, you know, you kind of like go forward, go back, go forward, go back, depending on which side you are. For this particular project, for all the trimmings, you're going to want to move forward when the inside of the work is facing you. So right now, I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna move like right about here. And on the outside, it's gonna look like this. And because you want a clean line of red yarn on the outside where people are actually gonna see it, that's when you're gonna wanna pay attention and reinsert it here, just onto the top of it, and pull taut, and then you have a clean red line. And you're gonna do the same thing. You're going to go a little bit further, make some progress. You're gonna pull through, and then you're gonna double back to make a nice red line. Like so. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish the sleeve, and then I'll show you how you need to insert the sleeve into the body of the cardigan, and then how to finish up the rest of your work. Okay, so moving on how to attach the sleeves. So I went ahead and I already sewed up one sleeve. This is all just put together and done now, except I haven't sewn the shoulder together yet, and we're gonna get to that later. It's important that you sew the sleeves in first before you attach the shoulder, otherwise it's gonna be really difficult to insert the sleeve. So what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna figure out where the sleeve lines up with your pattern that's already in the body of the cardigan. So, you know, this square is this seam is going to continue along the sleeve line, and so is this one. And you're going to insert it, you're gonna flip it open so that you have the right side and the right side of your sleeve attached and pinned, and then you're gonna sew along the inside these two boxes, and then you're gonna do the same thing with the back of the cardigan and the back side of the sleeve. You're going to connect front face to front face, and you're gonna sew these two squares together, and then you'll flip it inside out. And you'll sew up the sleeve on the inside, and then when you turn it right side out, it's gonna look like this, like a finished sleeve. Okay, so I already have my sleeves sewn on both sides, and it's looking pretty good so far. Okay, so the next step that you're gonna have to take is to sew up the shoulders, because right now it's just kind of all loosey-goosey. You can do this in one of several ways. So you're definitely gonna have to start with the shoulders first, and you're gonna sew them up right until here, right until you start to do the shaping for the collar. So you're gonna wanna sew up right to this point, okay? But not this point, this is gonna be open. You're gonna sew it right up to here. And same on the other side, just to give you a little view. You're gonna sew up right until this edge here and not include any of the shaping for the collar, because that's where the collar is gonna go. Here's my collar. It's the knit one purl one pattern, the ribbing that, you know, is specified in the instructions. So for the collar, like I said earlier, instead of the 119 stitches that the pattern recommends, I did 118 because it is a 2-stitch pattern, which means you need to have an even number of stitches in order to do the ribbing. I don't know why he says 119, but do 118, and you're gonna wanna do it for about 14 centimeters. This one I did about 12 just because it was taking me a long time, because this piece is going to take you the most time out of any single piece in this whole project. This just took me forever to stitch, but I was knitting this while I was waiting online to vote. And then here, as you can see, I'm pretty much done with the button band. So the instructions say to do a 55 centimeter button band, but that's only if you're doing the same exact pattern that J.W. Anderson was doing. The issue is that you first are gonna wanna measure the distance from the bottom ribbing of the front of your sweater all the way to the top where you start to shape the collar. So here I have the front of my cardigan. So you're gonna wanna measure from the very bottom all the way to the bottom of the ribbing, just to the top, right where it stops before the shaping for the collar. So if that winds up being 55 centimeters, great. But what you're gonna wanna do is that you're gonna end up stitching the top of your button band just right there on the outside, and you're gonna use the blue yarn to sew it into place, and you're gonna do it right on top, right on the outside, and you're gonna sew it all the way down to the very bottom here. All right? Now you can do that first, or you could sew in the collar first. It doesn't really matter as long as you don't overlap. And then you're just gonna be careful at the corner where the collar and the button band meet, because you don't want that to look messy. So make sure you leave yourself enough space to overlap if you're worried about them not quite meeting. So the last part I need to show you guys how to do is how to knit the button band. Now the instructions give you kind of a complicated pattern to do, but instead I just did a garter stitch. And I used 8 stitches in mine because I felt like that was a good width for it. And then to do the buttonholes, I'm going to show you how to do that now. So if you're doing 8 stitches like me, to do the buttonholes, what you're going to want to do is first knit the 2 first stitches here, and then it gets kind of complicated from there, so I'll just show you rather than explaining it. Okay, so to knit the buttonhole band, what you're first going to want to do is if you have 8 stitches, you first knit the 2, just plain knit them, then you're going to want to bring the yarn to the front side, and you're going to want to slip off this stitch here, bring the yarn back to the back side, slip off this stitch, similar to casting off, and you're going to raise this first stitch that you slipped off, raise it over this one, just like you're casting off. And then you're going to repeat that until you only have one more stitch here. So once you cast off all the stitches, you're going to take this stitch right here and you're going to slide it back onto your left knitting needle. Just like that. So I have 8 stitches. I have 2 on each side, and then the 6 in the middle have been cast off. And what you're going to want to do is flip this around, move the working yarn to the back, and then we're just going to add some more stitches to the left needle. And to do that, you just stick the right needle in between these 2 stitches that you already have, wrap the yarn around, pull through, and then you're going to put that stitch right on the needle to add another stitch. And you're going to want to do this 5 times because you cast off 4 stitches. You're going to do the 5th time because you have to do like a little magic in here to get it down to 8 stitches again. And so now that you have that one, you're going to want to go in between these 2 stitches and cast on another stitch. And you're just going to repeat this until you cast on 5, or 1 more than the number of stitches that you cast off originally. Okay, so now that I have all those stitches cast on, you're going to want to flip the work back over to the original right side. Bring that working yarn again to the back. And we're going to slip this stitch off on the left yarn. And we're going to cast that one off. Oh, if I can get it off. You're going to cast that one off, and then you're going to slip this loop back onto the left needle. It's a little complicated, but once you do it the first couple times, you'll get used to it. And then once you have 2 stitches back on the left needle, you just knit them normally. And then there you go, you have your horizontal buttonhole. So that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you guys really enjoyed this little mini series I made of how to knit the J.W. Anderson Harry Styles cardigan. I really like it. I think I'm pretty much done with it. I'm not totally happy with the buttons. I might change those out later on, but just small details, like it's by and large, it's done. And it's really comfy, it's really warm and really heavy. Like, I don't even need this until it's like 40 degrees outside. It is so warm. You could like use this as like a little bit of a jacket. But I had a lot of fun making this, and if you guys have any suggestions for projects I should do in the future, let me know in the comments down below. I'm gonna be making more videos, but who knows what they're gonna be. I don't know yet. And if you guys have any specific questions about this pattern or like what I did, feel free to let me know, reach out to me, and I'll try to answer your questions as best as I can. But I feel like my videos were pretty instructive. I hope they were. But I'm going to take a break from knitting for a while. I'm gonna be doing other things in the meantime because this took up all of my time. And I'm free. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up and subscribe down below to see more from me. Bye.